Security, Chad Wolf, is serving in his position unlawfully and did not have authority to scale back the program. Here to react is Fox News contributor and former acting ICE director Tom Homan. Tom, welcome to the show as always. So what do you make of this legal challenge to the scale back of DACA?
I think they're going to lose it. I mean, DACA is illegal. President Obama didn't have the right to do it. It's Congress's job to legislate. Because if you accept the fact that President Obama had the right to create this program out of the air, then certainly another president has that same authority to end the program. In the Supreme Court's decision, they didn't say the program's legal. They said the government ended it incorrectly because they didn't follow the Administrative Procedures Act, the 1946 statute, which is weak. That's a weak decision. And basically what the Supreme Court said is, you have to follow Administrative Procedures Act. You have to put it in Federal Register, give the public 30 days to respond to what your intents are, and you respond to those comments, then you act. So the Supreme Court gave the DHS Secretary a roadmap how to end this legally. That's what happened.
Tom, is it concerning to you, though, when you look at some of the numbers, you see AGs from 16 states and the District of Columbia filing these complaints about the administration's actions? Do you think this is just going to spiral?
No, you know what's really sad? One of these AGs hold Congress accountable. It's like the last couple of times I testified, it turned into this big argument because I told Congress they have failed American people. Their job is to legislate. If they want to fix the DACA, if they want to create some sort of amnesty program, then Congress needs to do their job. So soon the president, protesting in front of my house on a Sunday morning isn't going to affect the change you want. Hold Congress responsible. It's their job. It's their failure. Make them do their job.
So why do you think Congress doesn't act on this? When you poll people, and we've looked at polls over the years on this, most Americans support DACA. They support some sort of action, if not DACA itself, that's similar to DACA. Why doesn't Congress do something about it?
Well, there's two things. Congress knows a lot of things that we don't. Number one, it's a fact that many of these within DACA, these people within the DACA program, they're not children. They're not valedictorians. Many of them are in their 30s. Many have criminal histories, first of all. And second of all, a lot of people in Congress have been around a long time, understand, like I do, every time you reward illegal behavior, it's just going to cause more problems at the border. For instance, when DACA was passed in 2012, I told Secretary Napolitano and her staff, this is going to cause a surge at the border. And of course, I was called a fearmonger. Well, they went ahead and did DACA. And what happened in FY 13, 14, and 15? Hundreds of thousands of family units, mothers bringing their children to the United States, hoping they'll be the next DACA population. This country is showing over and over again that if you hang out long enough in this country illegally, we're going to give you something. So I think a lot of congressmen understand this, that you got to stop rewarding illegal behavior or you're never going to solve the immigration issue on the border.
I don't think anyone's going to be leaping to address it right now in a controversial election season on a very controversial topic. Tom Homan, thanks so much for being here. As always, we're going to continue to track these legal challenges, and I'm sure we'll have you back to talk about it. Appreciate it.
Good to see you. Thank you.
One of the first people freed under the First Step Act speaking at the RNC.
I always remembered that God knew my name, even in my darkest hour. But I never thought a president would.
Yesterday, Alice Johnson was given a full presidential pardon, and our next guest was in the room. Pastor Robert Jeffress joins us live coming up next.
Justice reform and for giving her and others like her a second chance. And yesterday, in a surprise ceremony, the president granted her a full pardon.
Alice was given a life sentence, and you spent about 22 years. And for something that today a lot of people wouldn't even be going to jail for. We're taking Alice from a commutation to a full pardon.
Our next guest was in the Oval Office as it happened and delivered a blessing. Joining me now, senior pastor at First Baptist Dallas Church and Fox News contributor, Pastor Robert Jeffress. Pastor, thanks for being here. So you were there, were able to give a prayer, appropriately so, at that moment. Take us inside the room and the president's motivation for things like this.
You know, this was so interesting. I was honored to be in the Oval Office to visit with the president about something else completely. And his aides told him that Alice Johnson was coming in after me. And he began to just voice out loud, wouldn't it be a great thing to give her a fresh start, to give her a full pardon? And so he talked to some of his advisors, as he should, about the upsides and downsides. And they outlined it for him. He said, this is the right thing to do. Let's do it. And And so he got the papers together very quickly. And Pete, when they brought Alice in and he told her, she was overwhelmed with tears of gratitude. And the president then asked me to give a prayer. And in my prayer, I thanked God that we have a president like Donald Trump who believes, yes, in law and order and justice, but he also believes in mercy. And Pete, this is what I wish your audience knew about the president like you and I do. When it comes to being tough, nobody is any tougher than Donald J. Trump. But when the situation calls for kindness, there's nobody any kinder or more gracious than he is. And that's what we want in a leader.
Pastor, on another topic similar involving faith, you know, the president's opponent, the former vice president, has talked a lot about saving the soul of America, restoring the soul. Now, this week, hundreds of faith leaders endorsed former Vice President Biden to restore the soul of the U.S. I didn't know presidents or politicians were in the soul business. Talk to me about what they're calling for.
Well, in that letter, they said also, we want Joe Biden to provide moral clarity for our nation. Look, electing Joe Biden to provide moral clarity is like hiring Jesse James to provide bank security. I mean, the fact is, Joe Biden is bankrupt, along with the Democrat Party, when it comes to morality. I mean, look at their position on abortion. They believe it's moral to go ahead and rip a baby from the mother's womb at the 9th month and dismember it because you don't like the sex of the baby. Joe Biden believes that ought to be legal. They believe it's moral. And what is moral about bankrupting the Little Sisters of the Poor, putting them in jail for not following the Obama contraceptive mandate? I mean, the fact is, the Bible, God, and even Biden's own Catholic Church provide moral clarity on these issues. Joe Biden just chooses to ignore those teachings, and that's why he's fuzzy in his thinking.
Pastor, they use that all the time, though. I go to church on Sunday because I know I have a soul in need of redemption. I don't go to the ballot box to redeem my soul. Why do they keep talking about the soul as believing that government can do that?
Well, and that was one of the president's greatest lines about not looking to the government for redemption, but looking to God. Look, they have to believe that way in the soul because they do know we have a soul, but they are a godless party. We saw that on display during their convention. They can't even talk about God in a proper way, and so they have made government their God. That's what's behind this.
Exactly right. Pastor Robert Jeffress, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. Great to have you.
Thank you, Pete.
Good to be in the right place.
Rallying supporters in New Hampshire and taking aim at Joe Biden just 1 month before the first debate.
I believe he's the worst candidate, the slowest candidate, and I mean in prime time he was the slowest candidate, which was a long time ago. Today's Democrat Party is filled with hate. Just look at Joe Biden's supporters on the streets screaming and shouting at bystanders. You ought to see last night in Washington. It was a disgrace.
Well, no political party has a monopoly on hate or empathy, but that does not look like the face of tolerance in the streets outside the Republican National Convention. Joining us now to discuss it is Trump 2020 senior advisor Corey Lewandowski. Corey, thanks for being here. As the president hits New Hampshire and then goes on the campaign trail, what are you finding is the major theme, the message that's resonating with voters?
Well, Will, last night in New Hampshire, in a little airport rally, we had 4,000 people inside the arena, and we had another 4,000 people outside. And let me just contrast that with what Joe Biden did yesterday. He announced he's going to get on the campaign trail in 10 days. So he didn't have a rally last night, Joe Biden. He didn't take any questions, but his big announcement was, after Labor Day, I'm going to go out and talk. What we saw last night in New Hampshire was the message of law and order. People want safety and security at their homes, at their places of worship, at their schools, at their businesses, and they know that Donald Trump is the only candidate who is working to defend and not defund the police.
Yeah, Trump lost New Hampshire by a narrow margin in 2016, Corey. Right now he's polling behind Joe Biden, but it seems to me the news cycle is moving in his direction. Do you see this movement in the polls a reflection of the RNC, or is it what we're seeing on the streets across the country?
Well, I think it's both. And if you look historically at candidates' conventions, most of the time candidates get a bump coming out of their convention. There have been 3 exceptions to that in modern history, Joe Biden being one of them. So it's amazing. If you go back to 1960, candidates who do not receive a bump coming out of their convention have always lost. John Kerry lost. Mitt Romney lost, and now Joe Biden. We're going to see a bump coming out of the Republican National Convention. The president gave an impassioned speech from the White House lawn. It was so strong. And then to follow that up with coming up to New Hampshire and bringing that message directly to the people, Donald Trump is going to win in New Hampshire in November. And I have predicted this. He's going to have a bigger electoral margin in 20 than he did in 16.
You know, one of the great lessons of 2016 is look at polling with some skepticism. But I want to show you the way that President Trump is polling today in some of the key battleground states as compared to 2016. I think we can put these up on our screen. This is Wisconsin. He is trailing Joe Biden by 3.5%. But let's compare that to 2016 when he was trailing Hillary Clinton by 9%. Similarly, Corey, in Michigan, he's trailing by 2.6%, but again in 2016 he was trailing Hillary Clinton by 9.5%. One more, Pennsylvania, trailing Joe Biden by 5.5%. He was 10 points behind Hillary Clinton some 4 years ago. He's trailing, Corey, but less so.
Well, and the truth is, there's a poll that came out yesterday that's public in Michigan. Donald Trump is up 1 point. Never other than Election Day, when Donald Trump won the state of Michigan by 10,704 votes, were we ahead. So we are very comfortable in our position right now in all the battleground states. And the fact that Joe Biden has to go to Minnesota, a state that a Republican has not won since 1972, should tell you how concerned the Democrats are about keeping that state in their win column. Donald Trump is going to win Minnesota because the message of safety and security works everywhere.
I don't know which of these polls to believe. 2016 taught me don't put too much into any poll, but certainly there seems to be some movement. We don't know how to measure the current moment, but enthusiasm seems to be going your way, Corey. Thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you, Will.
All right, next up, Fox Nation's Casey McDonald is getting an inside look at some of the most luxurious homes on the market. She's here to break down the mega homes. That's ahead. In the middle of our street, our house. Happy Saturday morning to you here on Fox and Friends. I'm Will Kane, along with Pete Hegseth and Jedediah Bila. Good morning, Jed.
Good morning, and it's almost September. Do you believe it? I looked at the date today and I was like, I must have missed like a few months somewhere along the way. It's going to be fall soon. Time to get out those fall clothes. The leaves are going to start changing. I get excited for season changes. This probably does not surprise either of you.
No. Fall is a great season. It usually means football. We'll see if it does, Will. It's also, I also always mark my calendar to August 29th. Today is National Chop Suey Day. Did you know that?
I did not.
It's the only day. It's the only holiday on this day. Usually there's like 5 of them I could choose from. That was the only one. So I don't know if we're doing anything about it on the show today. We should, but
I'm sure that's coming up later.
It's coming up later. I agree, though, Jed. Fall is a wonderful season, and it's finally upon us. Unless, Will, as you said, you're in Texas where it's 100 degrees.
It's 105 degrees today in Texas.
So it's always summer in Texas. Right. All right, well, we're going to move on to some of the politics that have occurred this week. If you're like us, you were glued to the TV watching the RNC and the presentation they gave as a juxtaposition to the DNC. And the president gave a 70-minute speech, ended with fireworks above the Washington Monument. Huge show that you would expect from a showman like President Trump. What you didn't expect, and what has become part of the news since, which is actually a very poignant reminder of exactly what the president talked about, is the treatment of attendees outside the White House once they left the White House gates. A mob was out there trying to...
They walked out to a bunch of thugs, and that wasn't, remember this, that wasn't friendly protesters. They were thugs. They were thugs. Thank God we had some good police around them, and they took tremendous abuse. Here's a U.S. Senator walking outside, and those 4 policemen should be brought over to the White House, and we ought to give them a medal of some kind, and we're going to do it. We're going to do it.
Yeah, when you see that, you can't help but be grateful for the police. What would have happened in a situation like that if the defund the police movement were successful, for example, and there were no police officers present? How would Rand Paul and his wife how could they have gotten to safety? And, you know, Pete, you opened the segment saying, you know, you expected this display by Trump with the fireworks and whatnot, but what you didn't expect was what followed. I actually was worried about this because if you look at the rioting going on around the country, if you look at the type of violence you were seeing, I was actually actually worried about people leaving that event, the base up. You need those people to get excited to come out and vote for you. But you also need those people in the center who are not sure which way they may lean to look and observe and say, hold on a second, that person speaks for me. Maybe I can vote for this person. Maybe I can, to sort of change the way they feel about something. One particular montage really stuck with me. It features walkaway Dems on why they voted for President Trump, why they will vote for President Trump. Very empowering. Take a listen.
Liberalism has changed, and I don't fit there anymore. I'm a Democrat. My parents are Democrats. I was a huge Obama supporter.
It feels like Democrats sort of get people hooked on this drug of free money, where they basically say, you know, if you want your fix, you have to keep voting for us.
His entire campaign, Worse for All Americans, that was a turning point for me. You can actually go from being a Democratic socialist to a Trump supporter. I hope that Trump wins and that we can continue with the progress that he's made.
A powerful video, and the people in the video are from the Walkaway campaign founded by Brandon Straka. We had him on the program earlier. Well, I've got some comments on that, but first, here's what Brandon Straka had to say about why this movement is so significant and was featured at the RNC. Watch.
It really is showing a larger awakening that is happening in this country. People who are waking up to the lies of the liberal media. They're waking up to see that the Democrat Party and their policies are not serving people well. And all this time that so many people have been resistant to or even hated President Trump, now they're really coming around and seeing that this is the president that we need to get behind in 2020.
Jed, you're right in pointing out that this could have been predictable, right? It's a gathering of Trump supporters. It's Washington, D.C. You could see it coming. But the fact that it's predictable doesn't mean we shouldn't believe it's abhorrent. It's a good moment for the inverse. Imagine if it were a crowd of people in MAGA hats harassing people. Brandon Straka was yelled homophobic slurs, while he left. Right. Imagine the amount of hate crimes legislation that would be coming out if Trump supporters were screaming at black Americans or others coming out of an Obama rally, screaming slurs at them. It would be a national investigation. So the inverse is what the media tolerates and never, ever, ever calls out.
Well, Pete, I would say this. I don't think any one political party has a monopoly on hate, but I would make 2 points. I have noticed personally that those that scream the loudest and cast the biggest accusations, whether or not it be racism or homophobia, seem to be ultimately talking about themselves. They are essentially casting onto others what they are holding inside. I'm very suspicious of those that get the most angry and cast the biggest aspersions. And I will just say this. What we've watched is a shutting down of debate, a cancel culture, a mob confrontation. The trend gets uglier and uglier until it becomes physical and violent.
It's true. There's no monopoly on either side. But if you go to a Trump rally, and there have been hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them, they're joyous, they're peaceful, they're welcoming, they're diverse. And ultimately, even if people are disagreeing, no one's accosting them and screaming at them and physically threatening at them. So
and this trend,
the problem is much more deep on the left.
And the trend of the moment is on the left. And this is not escaping people's attention. For example, Bill Maher on his program last night has noticed this movement, this enthusiasm, this essentially winning of the moment when it comes to President Trump. And he's getting nervous about Joe Biden's chances. Listen.
Of course, there were a lot of lies. I mean, it's Donald Trump. There's going to be a lot of lies.
Yeah.
Who cares? The question is it an effective message? You know, was it an effective convention? Maybe it's just their convention bump got to me.
Yeah.
But I'm feeling less confident than I was a month ago. I feel very nervous.
Yeah.
The same way I did 4 years ago at this time. They looked optimistic. They looked like the country isn't falling apart, even though the country is falling apart. And optimism very often wins elections. Elections, every politician will tell you, is about the future.
Yeah, and a very similar sentiment being echoed by Michael Moore. Check out this Facebook post. The Biden campaign just announced he'll be visiting a number of states, but not Michigan. Sound familiar? I'm warning you almost 10 weeks in advance, the enthusiasm level for the 60 million in Trump's base is off the charts. For Joe, not so much. Don't leave it to the Democrats to get rid of Trump. You have to get rid of Trump. You have to get rid of Trump. So, yeah, and you're seeing these leaders on the left sound the alarm again. Michael Moore and Bill Maher are known for their honesty. They don't mess around. They will tell you if they're worried. They will tell you if they're concerned. They have in the past, and they're doing it now. And it may be that they watched both conventions and couldn't help but notice that they're...
...trail, which he announced he'll do after Labor Day. But it is coming down to MAGA versus the mob. It's the red hats versus the black masks. And you could have seen it coming. But you heard that one pizza owner in Kenosha screaming out of his Papa John's or whatever he owns, saying, "Are you trying to get Donald Trump reelected?" Because that's exactly what you're doing. That's not us. You're marching with the same people.
To tie this all together, Jed brought up independence earlier. What Bill Maher and Michael Moore should be worried about is that one side seems to be embracing shouting people down in mobs. And you know who you will lose in that process? You will lose those independents in the middle.
That's exactly right. Yeah. All right, we got a few additional headlines for you.
Some quick headlines. New Orleans Saints and Pelicans owner Gail Benson has tested positive for COVID-19. The team say Benson is progressing well and hasn't missed a day of work calls. And the FDA expanding the use of remdesivir to treat people with COVID-19. The drug can now be given to children as well as adults. The New England Journal of Medicine says it is not a cure for coronavirus, but does help people recover faster. Over to you, Will.
Thank you, Jedediah. A Dallas salon owner who was thrown in jail for defying her state's lockdown order is running for office.
If you want someone that doesn't have to tell you they'll stand up and go to jail for you, I'll do it again and again because I will fight to keep our Texas values.
Shelley Luther announcing her run for a Texas state Senate seat at a Back the Blue rally. She made national headlines earlier this year after serving jail time for defying orders to keep her business closed. And Shelley joins us now. Good morning, Shelley.
Good morning, Will. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Let's do this first. Let's catch up on what's happened to you over the last several months. Last we heard, your business had been shut down. You served some jail time. How's business going right now?
Business is great. We've been opened actually since I opened that first day. Even when I was in jail, the business stayed open. So it's been awesome.
Managed to stay up and running throughout the pandemic, and it's good to hear your customer base is back. But now you're looking to join the ranks of government. You're running for state Senate in Texas. Tell us why.
Well, I mean, I've had thousands of people reach out to me. I think people are really yearning for a real person in government, you know, people that have real problems, you know, people that have been on the front lines and faced all of these difficulties, and they want someone in there that really cares and wants to really take care of what's happening.
Certainly, you were on those front lines when it came to the coronavirus pandemic and shutdown orders. As a potential state senator, what would be your approach to a situation like this? Would you at all have embraced the idea of a shutdown to deal with, to combat the coronavirus pandemic?
I think I would have done a temporary shutdown. Maybe 2 weeks or maybe even up to a month, 30 days at the most, just until we figured it out. And when I mean figured it out, meaning, okay, well, we will wear masks, or we will determine what is safe enough to go out or in. I just think that adults should be able to make their own decisions after a 30-day period. And if people want to take the chance to go somewhere, that is absolutely their right to do so.
I certainly understand the message of embracing individual choice. But help me understand, if you were in the state Senate, you would be willing to look at a sort of shutdown of businesses for a length of period of time. That seems to be somewhat in contradiction with the choice you made a few months ago, is it not?
No, because I did actually shut down for the period of time. And then when we were shut down for a month, and other businesses were thriving all around us, and the virus didn't seem to be spreading throughout the quote-unquote essential businesses, I thought, you know, it was definitely fair for my business to be open as well. And if people wanted to occupy or go into my business, we absolutely had the right to open.
Right. So after a period of time, open back up and let businesses decide if it's time for them. What about the way Texas is handling the pandemic now? Do you approve of Governor Abbott and the Texas legislature and how they're handling the coronavirus now?
I do not. We still have a statewide mask mandate, which I feel is ridiculous. I feel like if a business owner wants to require a mask to come in, then that's their right. In my salon, actually, I do require a mask to come in just because clients are face-to-face with the stylist for over an hour, sometimes 2 hours at a time. And if people want to come in my salon, they have to wear a mask. But there I feel like if there's a salon owner that does not want to require a mask, that is absolutely their right. People should be able to make decisions for themselves.
So you'd be opposed to a statewide mask mandate. Essentially, your message is, while you would embrace a temporary shutdown to handle something like the coronavirus pandemic, afterwards allow people and individuals and businesses to make their own choices?
Absolutely. And I mean, I don't know if we will see something like this in the foreseeable future, but 30 days max. And then if a governor wants to continue to make decisions, he or she needs to discuss that with other people in government. There needs to be a special session called, and this needs to be discussed with other people who can create laws for this, not just be a king or we'll turn into a communist state, and we can't do that.
All right, Shelley Luther, thank you for sharing your political platform. We wish you luck in your race and certainly happy your business is flourishing again. Thank you, Shelley, for your time this morning.
Thanks, Will.
Well, the president firing back, tweeting, quote, "The Dems don't want football back for political reasons, but are trying to blame me and the Republicans." Another lie, but this is what we are up against.
Here to react, Fox News analyst and Fox Nation host Lawrence Jones. What's up, Lawrence? Good to see you this morning. It is confusing, isn't it? It is. If I look across the places that sports has been canceled, specifically, let's start with college football, the Big Ten and the Pac-12. Those are decisions being made in states largely run by Democratic governors. In fact, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer has totally said the Big Ten made the right decision. So how will Joe Biden saddle President Trump with these decisions?
Yep, that's a good point. First, I want to say condolences to the family of Chadwick Boseman. Definitely a hero of many of us, and definitely their family is in our thought and prayers. But just to pivot to, I don't understand what the play is on this, because it is clear when you see even teams like the Dallas Cowboys and other southern states saying, look, we can actually take the proper precautions to make this work. I think they're just hurting their own base. I think no matter what political ideology you are, you're a sports fan. And I think the people are more in tune to what's going on in the country than Democrats give them credit for. So I don't think this is the right line of attack for them. I think overall their message is that this is the president's fault when it comes to the coronavirus. But what we're seeing is a shift in the poll. I think, with every story that I go out and shoot, we always say, who is the villain of the story? Well, the president has been able to correctly identify China to be the villain of the story. And I think that's why some of the public polling is going. So people may be upset at football being canceled, but I think more people are starting to blame the government in China that did not let the world know that they had this virus going on.
Yeah, Lawrence, I want to ask you about the public perception of all this. I recently saw a poll that showed that the public, in large part, stands with the players in protest when they decide that they don't want to play right now, when they decide that they want conditions met, when they want to have an active voice in social justice. That was a little bit surprising to me, because I hear so many people all the time talking about how sports has gotten so political and it's a turnoff. So what do you think public sentiment really is on this issue right now?
I think that during the pandemic, a lot of people saw the abuses of the state, whether it was a mother that was taking her child to the playground and was arrested, or Luther, you had Luther just on from my great state of Texas, that her salon was shut down, to people that were abused by the state when it comes to losing their life, or the bad apples of police brutality. And I think that shifted public sentiment. And so I do think people do stand with the players.
That a little bit, because you've talked about abuse of government power and how the black community oftentimes feels like and is perceived differently by some quarters of law enforcement. But how do you advance the conversation without acknowledging that, Jacob Blake was violating a restraining order? He had a sexual assault warrant out. He had a knife or didn't have a knife. He put one of the officers in a headlock. They tried to use a taser twice. He was resisting arrest for minutes. That almost is never included when we're talking about justice in the situation. Why not? And how do you reconcile that?
Well, justice is also due process. And so a defense is going to be mounted, and that case is going to be made. But, you still have people that still debate on whether George Floyd should have died or not. Some people have blamed it on the drugs that were in his system, when we have autopsies that suggests otherwise when we have a video. And so, yes, I think it is adequate. It is correct to say officers deserve due process. They deserve to mount a defense, and we deserve as a public to hear all the facts. But then others would push back and say, well, even when the evidence is so convincing, even though we have a video, you still have people that go on air and still say, oh, well, it was the drugs in his system that killed him.
You know, I am surprised at that poll that Jedediah referenced just a moment ago about the way the public feels about sports embracing politics. Lawrence, I want to read you a joint statement from the NBA and the NBA Players Association. This is part of what they have hoped to accomplish, have agreed to accomplish. In every city where the league franchise owns and controls the arena property, team governors will continue to work with local election officials to convert the facility into a voting location for the 2020 general election to allow for safe in-person voting in vulnerable communities. I saw you earlier this week. You and I spoke privately. I certainly respect the players' conviction. But what I wonder is, when politics is infused with sports, I guess that's fine unless it's only one side of the political message. I just wonder if this whole process of encouraging voting at certain NBA facilities and sports being infused with politics, if there's not an underlying message of, but vote our way.
Well, it may be. And I think that we should meet them on the battlefield of ideas and say, well, this is our message as well. And I think that's one of the problems that I have with the right now, is that the message of liberty, due process, that's our message. We should be saying this is where we stand on, you know, the fact that Rand Paul, I mean, I'm a libertarian, people know that. Rand Paul was attacked when he has been the guy that's been against the state's abuse of power. It's very concerning to me that people don't know that. Whether it's the FISA court, whether it's the criminal justice, the guy is pro-legalization of all drugs. He's gone against the police state. He's gone, I mean, if they wanted a champion for someone that's going to go out there and fight for their civil liberties, it would be Rand Paul.
But he supports Trump, Lawrence. That's his sin. In their mind, everything is justified because, well, Trump is racist, therefore anyone who supports him must be racist. The conversation doesn't go any further than that.
Well, the conversation stops at racism for a lot of people, and I think the president, the best way to end all of that is to go to the people himself. He cannot just allow the media to paint a picture of him. He got to say, look, you're forgotten as well. I understand you. I didn't just accomplish criminal justice reform, but I'm getting ready to tackle the next issue at hand as well. And I think if the president can go and talk to his American citizens, he can bypass all the misconceptions that may people that may assume that he's racist or doesn't care about black folks. He can bypass all of that by going straight to his people, the American people.
Certainly did that with the convention, too.
Lawrence Jones, my fellow libertarian, thanks for being here as always, a much needed voice at this time.
Thanks, Lawrence.
Thanks, Lawrence.